Right. Good afternoon, colleagues. Well done for still being here, still looking alert, still looking engaged. That's fantastic. This has been a long day, but I think a very full and informative day. I don't really want to spend too much time going over everything that we did today, but I would like to summarize what I think are some of the key ideas that, from my perspective, I've understood from today. They might not necessarily be all your ideas. We just learned a little bit about Krashen and constructivist theories and so on. And we all come to this conference with very different perspectives, very different contexts, very different understandings of EMI, of our part that we play in that process of supporting or engaging with EMI in higher education. And I think all of what we've learned today, we interact with slightly differently. We process it slightly differently. We understand it slightly differently. And I think one of the great strengths of a conference like this is that we can share all these perspectives that we have. We can see things from other people's perspectives, but ultimately at the end of the day, we understand them from our own context and our own background and experience. So forgive me if this doesn't quite sound like your understanding, but I will try my best to summarize very briefly, because I think it has been a long day, the learnings from today. We started feels like a year ago now, with Nicola Galloway and Jim McIlney talking about the sort of issues around, we were looking at impact of EMI on graduate employability. And I thought that was an excellent frame to start the conference, because, you know, to sort of be aware right from the beginning that, you know, one half of the world is studying through English. That there's this galloping, I think was the word, I loved it, the galloping adoption of EMI across nations in all sorts of contexts, for all sorts of reasons. So, you know, this sort of academic lingua franca, the fact that 94% of publications are actually globally published in English, and the importance of that and what that actually means. And the perceived impact of EMI and of English on employability and the labor market and opportunities in higher education and employment for graduates. So I think you know, we got this sense of this unstoppable train that's left the station and is traveling very fast now. I just wanted to say that I think that if I jump to the end of our day today, the panel discussion we've just had, because I think a lot of those ideas were taken a little bit further and deeper and reinforced. So, you know, I think we had on the panel perspectives and representatives from Georgia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Warwick University. And I think you know, that I felt that we got a sense of those different perspectives and the different contexts. This analogy of the high-speed train which has left the station and is probably now unstoppable, I think that we'll all leave this conference with that analogy. And I think what we were talking about was, you know, how do we manage this situation, which is not reversible, but how do we engage with it and manage it? And as practitioners and academics and policymakers, what are the things that we can be doing to address some of the issues that we learnt about today? We learned that excuse me. We learned that EMI can enrich the learning experience, but there are also other aspects that we need to think about as well. We heard the phrase symbols over substance. which I thought was an interesting expression, the idea that internationalization is drawing sort of national and institutional policies, sort of driving this national and institutional policies, but can be superficial and perhaps not well thought through. And I think our role in this conference, and perhaps when we leave this conference, is to think a little bit about how we can add more substance to what we're doing and how we're supporting and the sort of messages we give about EMI afterwards. I think we all agreed that English is a crucial skill. It's like having a driving license. And I think that, you know, without English, we are undermining the prospects of young people across our region. But I think the question was, does English equal EMI? And I think we had a good discussion about the fact that English is important, and is EMI the answer? Well, not only, I think, was the view that I'd understood. So this idea of intercultural competency and the fact that it requires a multilingual repertoire, I think that was an interesting idea. And the fact that, you know, we need to access and engage with content or knowledge or our understanding doesn't necessarily have to only be through English, and we should fight that in a sense. We should be aware of a multicultural aspect to things. And we should be able to communicate in domains in technical language that is not just English technical language. And I'm always reminded of teachers who I talk to who can only talk about teaching through English because they don't have the ability, they don't have the technical language and the experience to talk about their teaching to other teachers who don't speak English. It's very difficult for them. And you know, we, from a teacher educator's point of view, we often work with mentors through English, and we engage and we discuss practice and all of these things. And then they're supposed to go and work with colleagues who don't speak English. They speak through the L1. And they find it very difficult to try and do that. So that's an interesting idea. So understanding the sort of role of multilingualism, I think, came out throughout today, and I'm sort of very interested in that. It reminded me of a story I once heard. I don't know whether it's true or not, which was the idea that children, this was more to do with children in schools learning through the medium of English, but Arab children in Morocco were learning through the medium of English, and they were learning a word like storytelling, and they were told that storytelling is telling a story, which is a very simplified view of storytelling. But the word that they use in Morocco for a storyteller and storytelling is related to the Arabic word related to circle. And it's a much bigger concept of what is a story within their culture. So with children growing up only hearing that storyteller or storytelling is about telling a story, but they lose that whole cultural, historical sort of strength that they actually came with. So I think that resonated with me. I think we have explored quite a lot of issues related to EMI. I don't want the conference to go away feeling sort of negative and deflated by this. I think we need to be aware of the realities of what we're engaging with. You know, we talked about language proficiency of both teachers and students. We talked about, you know, assessing language and establishing standards with Vicky. And I think that these are issues. There were lots of other issues that were there. But I think the overriding message that I got is that, you know, okay, we need to, I think Tony talked about focusing on the needs of students and teachers and not telling students and teachers what they need. And I thought that was the precursor to the sort of solution that we've been exploring today, which is the importance of research into all of this. And I think right at the beginning of today, we learned that the problem is that so many countries and contexts are embarking on EMI, but are doing it without the information that they really need from their contexts and cultural situations, etc., to make those right decisions. And I think that a lot of people here today are engaging in EMI research, and I think that's absolutely crucial. We heard about several pieces of research, the University of Westminster research. We learned the Ultra Award research that's been conducted across Bill Kent University and University of Surrey into these things. And I think that, we are also, the British Council is embarking on regional EMI research, and I think other people are. I think it's fairly shocking that in this region there is so little research that has been done, and thankfully this has really been addressed now, and I think this conference is an important part of that dialogue and starting that whole process. So, I think the other aspect we learned was that we need to think about more creative ways of supporting teachers and learners. So I think pre-sessional courses, it's not enough. They don't get the right kind of English, and they need continuous support and so on. And I'm hoping that when we go through tomorrow, we're going to learn more about these kind of issues and the sort of more positive view of what can be done to support students sort of struggling in some cases to learn their subject through the medium of English. I think overall, we are on this train. I think it's a very important train. We're all passengers on it, but we have a real say. A train maybe is the wrong analogy, because trains tend to run on a track and they have a destination. But perhaps we want something which we can change the destination. We certainly want to be able to slow it down. We want to be able to make sure it's better informed. And I think those are the sort of messages that I took away from today. So apologies if that's not your perspective, but I think we all have our own perspectives on this. We are sharing some questions. I'm looking at the Yulia over there. We are actually sending a summary of a recording of this to our colleagues in China, who are holding a sister conference, I guess I could call it, a sister conference in China at the same time with the British Council looking at EMI in higher education. And we wanted to engage with our colleagues on the other side of the world, actually not so far from here as from perhaps other places, and see whether we are discussing the same issues, addressing the same issues, exploring the same issues. So these questions are going to be, have been sent to our colleagues in China. And tomorrow, at the end of our session tomorrow, they'll be recording their answers to this, and they'll be giving their perspectives on these questions. And I think that I've tried to sum up some of the ideas from here, but certainly we'll be interested in finding the perspective from the Chinese conference as well.